So walking into this week's episode of Kaguya-sama, Love is War, I have to say this was definitely one of my top picks for favorite episode of Kaguya-sama, definitely in the top 3 for me, which is interesting because it didn't have me laughing out loud, but it was so amusing and well directed and executed. It was just a really solid episode. Something I really appreciate is how they're never overusing Chika as well as Yu. There are these two characters that are so different from the other, especially different from our central duo, which is Miyuki and Kaguya, who are competing. It's their anime, it's them trying to outbeat the other, outclass the other, so they can be the top dog in their relationship. But you'll have Chika, this air of positivity and wave of corruption that will always spice things up, shake up the cast, and then you have Yu, who is just a downer, always depressed, and brings it down in a different way, but they never let these characters overstay their welcome. Every time they're on screen and then they leave, you always want to see more of them, you're always glad that they are on your screen, but they never stay to the point that you feel like they're overstaying their welcome, so the anime consistently leaves you wanting to see more of both Chika as well as Yu, and even when they aren't on screen and you're focusing on either Miyuki or Kaguya, they're still able to hold scenes together. It's a really interesting balance that I think not a lot of rom-coms can get right, because when you have a cast as strong as this, you would think always just have these characters together, always bickering and talking, but no, if you leave them out sometimes, it actually makes the viewer more happy and more excited when they do pop back on screen. And when you do have them all together, it just becomes such a mess that it's just glorious to watch. This episode was pretty interestingly structured because two of the stories kind of connect together. They did an interesting technique where after this whole test situation is done, they rewind a week back and show you it from Yu's perspective. I thought it was an interesting balance. It's something that hasn't happened up till now over the past couple of months of Kaguya-sama, and it really was interesting. The first part of the episode, I think, really set the stage. Kaguya is essentially planning for the future, how she's going to get herself into this family that Miyuki has, and the idea is that now that Miyuki's sister is in the student council room, this is her chance to kind of tutor her, mentor her, show her intelligence, but no, maybe she should just befriend her to the point that she will call her sister. A very, actually not bad plan. They've had some pretty ridiculous plans, but I have to say, in terms of Kaguya's kind of like trying to get inside Miyuki's family essentially, like this was probably one of her best plans. That was until we see that Chika has already befriended, and hell, this girl already considers Chika her sister. That was just the icing on the cake. What I love is how you see things from both Kaguya and Chika's perspective. Chika is literally just friends with this girl, but Kaguya, this is the most active betrayal, and I've been saying it time and time again. I truly believe Kaguya would kill someone if you give her enough of a reason. I think we came damn close in this week's episode, and just to see how quickly she snaps from absolute murderous intent to I love you, Chika, you are my best friend, because she eventually invites Kaguya to kind of tag along. It's glorious. I love how terrifying but also lovable this girl is, which is part of the charm. Maybe we have Stockholm Syndrome like you does for Kaguya, because it's such a terrifying character that on one hand you're like, given her enough of a reason, she could really become a horrible mastermind in this world. Killing people, just setting up sabotage. I mean, she talks and just kind of smiles about sending someone away to a different country. Like, this girl is wild, but that's part of the charm. And I thought just the overall design of Miyuki's sister was pretty adorable. I like her personality because she kind of seemed emotionless. She seemed like she wasn't having a reaction, but near the end of this kind of part, she's very much blushing because she is either in love with Kaguya or she just found Kaguya adorable the same way Kaguya found her adorable. It was a very nice setup intro. Like, I just thought just the idea of bringing Chika, once again, she foils Kaguya's plan time and time again, either intentionally or just not intentionally, but it still is equally funny. It was a very nice setup. But when we get into the test situation where we have, of course, Kaguya and Miyuki, two brainiacs, the top students at the school, they want to beat the other, they want to be number one in terms of their grade. It seems that Miyuki is pretty damn smart. He's been winning year after year after year, but it seemed like he was having some trouble balancing work and his education. He was losing sleep, but I love how he's just kind of passing it off like, oh no, nothing's happening. It really shows like just how determined this guy is just to be the top dog in this relationship. He balances his work life, he balances the council and school, but he just sacrifices everything just for that pride, and it's so ridiculous that you just love it so damn much. You have Kaguya doing the same thing, trying to play it off as it's not a big deal how you study or anything like that. You got Chika just being like, maybe I won't study at all. You being like, I'm just gonna go play games. I promise I'm gonna study. And then you just see him playing games at night. And there was some modern references as well on the posters on his wall, which is a nice touch for any gamers out there. It was just such a very interestingly structured episode because you have this kind of back and forth mentality. It was really just kind of listening to their internal dialogue, seeing how they were kind of structuring and planning for their tests. And I love that end scene where you just see Kaguya trying to be very cool, like, oh, you beat me. And the narrator's talking like how she would bleed through her eyes, how she just wants to stomp her feet around. You got Miyuki just kind of fist pounding in the air from excitement while he's in the washroom after being like, no, it's not a big deal. I don't feel anything from this anymore. But he really pushed himself. And it's kind of interesting because it seems like Miyuki won, but it also, after you transition, it seems like maybe if she wasn't busy tutoring you, who knows what would have happened with that test. But I think it's the end stage of this episode that really ties it as one of my favorites, simply because the first two stories are entertaining, they're adorable, they're lovable, they're frightening, they're everything that makes kind of Kaguya-sama what it is. Strong visual directing, over-the-top reactions, the voice acting is adorable and frightening, but then you get the rewind and you see that Kaguya really wants you to pass, because he already has a bunch of flags. If he fails the exams, he's going to be held back here. He seems to not care. We get a little bit of a taste that apparently he was a troublemaker in his past school. People look at him like a ticking time bomb. Something in his past obviously made him the way he was. And it seems that a lot of people judge him even though he is in the student council. I like what happens here is because it starts off very, like, menacing. Yu is terrified of Kaguya. We've seen that time and time again. And that torture scene, on one hand, you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, maybe Yu is just overreacting. Maybe it's not as dramatic as he's making it out to be. But then again, in this same episode, we saw Kaguya almost willing to kill Chika because she thought Chika was stealing her potential future sister. Like, this girl is wild, so even though on one hand we're thinking maybe Yu's being a little overly dramatic, on the other hand we're like, well, we've also seen how this girl thinks. She's absolutely terrifying, and if anyone's a walking time bomb, it might be her. So it's just a very fun and over-the-top scene, probably my favorite interaction between Kaguya and Yu up till now, because it is so ridiculous. I love the sound effects and the very cliche horror music while playing. It fit that so perfectly because on one hand, like I said, you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, it can't be that bad, but they're directing it in such a fantastic way that I was laughing. I love how he kept trying to escape until his will just got crushed so bad. It was hilarious. It was adorable. It was a little bit of everything, you could say. But that scene where you have basically people kind of bad-mouthing Yu, and then Kaguya kind of standing up for him, it was a very nice emotional scene. And what I appreciate about this emotional scene is Kaguya-sama can have dramatic, it can have emotional scenes, but what I appreciate is they're able to walk this line of actually fleshing out, developing characters, having the emotional responses of Kaguya standing up for Yu considering Kaguya like his mortal enemy, someone who's going to kill him, but seeing that even though she's standing up for him, he's like, you don't have to do this, like, you're just gonna get badmouthed, and she doesn't care. Something that you would think a friend would naturally do. And what I like is how even after that emotional moment, you know, Yu passes, Kaguya freaks out, and goes comedy. And it's exactly what we need to see with Kaguya-sama Love is War. Keep it comedic. Even after seeing that emotional scene of standing up for a friend after Yu is viewing this girl as someone who's going to kill him, we get right back into that Kaguya-sama charm. Not many series can do it. And most series, I wouldn't want this. I would want them to just keep on the serious and, you know, emotional and not go comedic. Here, however, it fits Kaguya's character so perfectly that we gotta have Yu shitting his pants after that test result. I love it. All the individual reactions, the voice actors were killing it. I think Kaguya and Yu probably were the star of this episode, both visually as well as their voice acting. Miyuki didn't have too much of a role in this episode, but his scenes were very nice. I also like how he was kind of listening in during that kind of Kaguya standing up for Yu speech. Kaguya-sama isn't letting up. 2 months later, we're still seeing new and interesting ideas being explored, and because we have these 4 characters who are all so different, you can play around with the cast dynamic, be it Yu and Kaguya, maybe it's going to be Yu and Chika, Yu and Miyuki, Miyuki and Kaguya, Miyuki and Chika. Like, there's so many ways that you can play around, either with just 2 characters or all of them, or maybe 3 characters, and you know the cast can continue to get bigger if they want to, so when it could grow stale, you can just reintroduce another cast member and explain why they weren't in the club for so long. Maybe like Yu, they were just chilling underneath the desk or something like that. I like how Kaguya-sama is able to be such a stunning comedy with well-directed and thought-out sequences, but it can also sprinkle into a little bit of character development as well. You're seeing so many little interesting things at play that really just build it into not only one of the best rom-coms out there, but just one of the best anime that I can recall in quite a while, just because it knows how to not only just be a stunning comedy, but it also understands that comedy can actually lead to interesting development as well, like we see with Yu and Kaguya in this episode. I definitely don't expect that it's going to change too much. I think Yu is going to continue to be very fearful of Kaguya, but at the same time, I think in the back of his mind, he might keep this in mind, like, well, maybe she's not all bad. I mean, Miyuki says that at the end of the episode. He used to also view her as a very cold person, but you can see that she definitely is lovable deep down inside, just she is a little bit of a yandere, and she has a bit of murderous intent if she thinks that you're trying to get in between her and her man. This episode, like I said, it didn't leave me laughing out loud. There was very humorous lines. It just didn't get that chuckle out of me like past episodes, but I think just having that emotional scene, the very amusing and interesting setup, especially having the second and third stories kind of linked together and doing that rewind sequence, a very interesting technique. I thought it was clever and kind of a way to freshen up the style and format of this show. It was just good. Honestly, I think anyone saying that it wasn't a good episode, they're probably doing what you did in this episode and just saying that and then lying behind their back, because that's just how they roll. But let me know what everyone thought of this week's episode of Kaguya-sama Love is War, your favorite out of the 3/2 stories, I guess you could say. What did you think of the emotional/comedic development between Kaguya and Yu? Where do you think the series is gonna go just with this cast as a whole? Let me know down in the comment section below. Remember, leave a like if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.